Good evening. Welcome to yet another riveting event. CIC is proud to present Dr. Sriram Raghavan, who is going to talk to us about the AI revolution which is taking the world by storm. My pleasure to introduce him. He is the Vice President at IBM Research for AI. In this role, he leads a worldwide team of research scientists and engineers who are advancing the field of AI and accelerating its applications to the digital transformation of enterprises. He is responsible for establishing and executing a wide ranging research agenda that spans foundational and applied AI. He also has overall responsibility for the R&D portfolio and transfer of technology from IBM Research to IBM's over 25 billion plus software business. Prior to his current role, Sriram was the director of the IBM Research Lab in India and the CTO for IBM in India and South Asia. Sriram began his career in IBM at the Almaden Research Center in San Jose, California, where he led a variety of research efforts in natural language processing, data management, and distributed systems. He is an alumnus of Stanford University, USA, and the Indian Institute of Technology, Chennai. He is a recipient of multiple IBM Corporate and IBM Research Accomplishment Awards and is on the technical advisory board member of several research organizations. It's a pleasure to welcome Sriram Raghavan. Please join us on the stage. In conversation with him will be Anand Raghavan, who is a trustee of the CIC. He's a chartered accountant with over 30 years of experience in financial services, taxation, and regulatory consulting. He has served in various organizations, including Sundaram Finance, Ernst & Young, and he specializes in NBFC regulations, corporate tax, and restructuring. Currently, he is an independent director on several boards. He is also director of the Chennai International Center and the Nani Palkiwala Arbitration Center. He contributes regularly to national committees, including the NFRA and RBI's ARC committee. He is a regular columnist and speaker and has published extensively on corporate governance and economic policy. Please put your hands together for the team of Anand and Sriram.
Good evening and thank you, Chandramouli. The only reason I'm sitting next to Sriram here is that Chandramouli was absolutely clear that he needed somebody to moderate who has zero knowledge of artificial intelligence. So, with that basic qualification, I'll try to do the balancing act to the extent possible. But my role is not to get into a very detailed conversation on a very complicated subject. It is. And Sriram has, he's seen it all. The last few years, he's been eating, drinking, and virtually sleeping AI. Wake him at the middle of the night, it will be AI conversation. So that's the type of involvement he has on this subject. When I actually felt that he should come and talk to CIC, it was about a year back. And it fructified into reality today. And I'm a little upset with him. I'll be very frank with him. Why I got upset with him was actually I gave him a subject, AI for AA, which is artificial intelligence for the Aam Aadmi. But somehow he sort of tweaked the subject to make it very modern looking, to say demystifying the AI revolution. But I guess whether it's Lok Sabha, assembly, or seminar, the speaker has the last word on any subject. So this is also another case where Sriram decided that this would be the subject. Now, I will just set the context and I'll tell you where I'm coming from. Is that this subject today is the most talked about subject, whether you are a walker in Nageshwara Park or whether you are the corporate board of one of the top nifty 500 companies or wherever. Everybody's talking about it. But the time has come that the talk around AI has to culminate into concrete action on the ground across industries, across various pockets of the ecosystem. So that I think is the most important element of AI that this audience is looking forward. And before you plunge into the subject, the first 25 minutes, I want you to give us a historical perspective of what has happened and where are we today, and some blue sky gazing as to what's going to happen over the next 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, as the case may be. Chandramouli introduced him, IIT Madras, Stanford, and all that. I know him from a schoolboy. I've seen him grow. Let me be again honest to this audience here that Sriram today may be traveling about 265 days out of 365 days somewhere in some continent, 40,000 feet above sea level. But I am very clear when I say that his feet is firmly rooted on the ground. For him, it's Chennai. He's a Mylapore boy who's made tremendous success in this field. And we're extremely happy to see him back in Chennai to address this gathering on the subject of AI. So the format is very simple. First 20-25 minutes, he will give us the overview. I have a few very, very simple set of questions which I will pose. Maybe some of them could be audience related also. And at 7 sharp, we will let it open for the Q&A session for the audience. Normally we close at 7:30, but because of the importance of the subject, we will possibly close at 7:43, another 2 minutes for concluding session, and therefore 7:45 we'll close. Over to you, Sriram.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. As Anand said, he knows me from many years back before AI was the subject of our conversation. I think our conversation used to be on the quality of vadai we used to eat on the road. And now we are now talking about AI. So again, my distinct pleasure to be here. When he first asked me to talk about AI for the Aam Aadmi, I said, and I'm glad I made the right correction. This is by no means an Aam Aadmi audience. It's a very distinguished set of guests. And I think my opportunity here is to share a perspective on what I observe, both as a technologist and also as somebody who is working with clients across the globe to try and make sense of this technology and deliver value. And so what I hope to do in the next 20, 25 minutes is just offer a perspective and maybe wearing 3 distinct hats. So I was thinking about how to structure this. Unfortunately or fortunately, AI is a very misused word in some respects. It is used to talk about many things that have been happening for decades, yet we pretend it's brand new. But yes, there is something brand new. So I want to try and distinguish between what is brand new, what has changed, why are we now all interested. But I want to wear 3 hats in this conversation. So the first hat is I will wear a technologist hat and try and give an intuition for why a term that actually is 70 years old, actually 69 years old to be precise. Why is that term now the hottest topic and what has changed? So that I'll wear a technologist hat. Then I'll wear a little bit of a business enterprise hat and try and talk about what I see must happen for this technological innovation to actually fructify in terms of meaningful impact on enterprises, governments, nations. Then finally, I think I will also wear a pure play, human being consumer act and talk about what I hope AI will make happen and what I hope AI will not make happen. And that will be a personal perspective. So that's sort of the structure of what I wanted to do. And I certainly look forward to a conversation because I think I've found that in similar such circumstances, a Q&A discussion is much more a vibrant way to exchange knowledge. So I certainly look forward to that as well. So maybe I'll begin first with some statistics. So today, the investment in AI is growing at the rate of, depending on who you ask, what you want, 80 to 100% year-on-year growth in AI if you just simply look at venture fund investment. The numbers are, I think, as of last year, about 1/3 of all venture investment in technology was AI. I didn't check this year, but I suspect that number is easily doubled right now when you look at what venture investment is happening. Another data point which we will come back to is AI is not free. So the estimate is that in a couple of years now, if you look at all energy consumption for data centers, AI workloads will be easily 1/4 of energy consumption. So we have to we have to keep that in mind as we want to deploy this technology, what it takes to build the technology. And then the last comment I will make is, and these numbers always, they are estimates by many, many people. But in general, the expectation is that there is of the order of $4 trillion worth of impact on the the profit of enterprises across the globe expected from this technology over the next 5 to 10 years. That's the estimate. Again, we can always look back at the number 5 years from now, but suffice it to say there is a lot of opportunity. So where is all this excitement coming from? So let me start with a little bit of history because it's always instructive. So we talked about 69 years. So the term itself was coined in a Dartmouth conference in 1956. And if you go back and actually look, their vision of what those 10 people who came together, leading mathematicians, computer scientists at that time, they used different words. They actually had a big discussion on words, which is why they decided, John McCarthy decided, I'm going to call it artificial intelligence. We are stuck with that word today. Their vision is as much what we talk about today as the vision. So for 69 years, we haven't actually realized the vision. The vision of automating systems, the vision of computers thinking, reasoning, being able to take over our cognitive faculties hasn't happened. And if you look at that history, I think we are in what I would call the fourth era. The first era, we thought we would build intelligent systems by somehow writing down knowledge and teaching systems of how to infer new knowledge from existing knowledge. That was the original idea, that we would write down. We would say, cat is an animal, or a cat has 4 legs. And somehow by writing down all of this knowledge and teaching the system how to infer, that we would build intelligent systems. Nothing happened, too laborious. You can't write down knowledge that way. That was the AI winter. The next step in AI was when we started instrumenting the world. We started collecting digital data. Was the era of machine learning and predictive AI. To this day, we all use, whether you know it or not, we're all touching predictive AI in our daily lives today. It is used in forecasting, it is used in financial analysis, it is used in manufacturing. So predict, where you use data to make predictions, is a well-established discipline, will continue to have applications. But it was limited in its application because it primarily worked on numerical data, primarily, in a few other modalities. And it required a lot of expertise to create individual capabilities for every task you wanted to do. So it only made sense to do it where the ROI was there. So that was sort of the second era. In 2010-11, when we started having the web, and there were companies like the social media companies, the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks of the world, when they started gathering enormous volumes of data for free because of the business model, where on a daily basis, people were uploading photos and tagging, providing input, or people were shopping and telling you what you liked. There was a class of AI that developed that was able to make use of way more data than any other company had ever had access to. So that was, if you will, starting 2010. There is a term for that type of AI called deep learning. The problem was that that type of AI only made sense if you somehow had a business model that gave you quote unquote free access to enormous volumes of data. And that technique you have to build for every use case repeatedly. So you have a problem to solve, you must invest money, you must gather the data, curate the data, build a model, solve that problem. And it only made sense if between data gathering and the payoff, the ROI math made sense. So consumer-facing companies, Amazon's, Facebook's, Google's of the world exploited it. It never made its way in any substantive fashion to broader enterprises. Because an enterprise doesn't always have, every enterprise doesn't have billion-dollar problems to solve. Not every enterprise has free data. You have lots of data, but it isn't free at the scale that was needed. And you didn't have labeled data. Labeled data means that you not only have data, you have what you want to do with the data. We as consumers provided labeled data for free to all these companies. When you do a Google search query and click, you're giving labeling. You upload a photo and say, this is Anand Raghavan, I'm giving it labels. So that business model allowed them to deploy a class of AI. That was 3 eras, right? Era of winter, nothing happened. We tried to write down knowledge. Then the era of predictive AI, the era of deep learning. The era that we are in, which has gotten us all excited and why we have this audience here wanting to understand, is this era of generative AI. And what has fundamentally changed is the following. We have managed to figure out how to build something that is reusable. So instead of investing to build an AI for every problem you want to solve, you're able to build these general purpose models. And today these models have become household names. I think a kid on the street knows ChatGPT, OpenAI, Anthropic, Claude, etc. These are really models that have the power that you can build them independent of a use case, but you're able to quickly adapt it to a use case. So your ROI has suddenly changed. Instead of having to ask every time I build a model, how much money will it take, what value, you're suddenly able to build an artifact that then scales through usage. And that is what has gotten everybody excited. More importantly, companies are now able to upfront give you AI that you can start to use and quickly start to derive value. Where before every AI project was a 6-month, 1-year exercise that may or may not have payoff, the opportunity to scale is better because of. And the big revolution is this idea of what's called pre-training. That independent of what task you want to do, I'm able to gather data and train a model. So for example, let's take a consumer example. When OpenAI trains a model, they don't know what Anand is going to ask. They don't know what Sriram is going to ask. They don't know what any of you are going to ask. Yet they train a model. So what we have figured out as a technology community is the way to train a model agnostic to a task and then rapidly adapt it. And that gives you a kind of scaling that you never had before. That's why this generation of AI is very, very exciting. So that's one, the ability to adapt. The second thing that's very, very different, which I think is personally very exciting for me, is this technique is very, very broad based. We're starting to see this technique applied not just to language and text, we are seeing it applied to software and code. We see it applied to molecules. We see it applied to chemistry. We see it getting applied to data from colliders in a nuclear reactor. We can see the data being applied to satellite imagery. So this is a technique that has this collection of techniques has such huge ramifications that it has the potential to touch many, many, many industries and domains. So those are the two big takeaways. The ability to build something and rapidly adapt it, which we never had in AI, at least the previous generations, and the ability now to apply it cross-domain over a large number of modalities. That's what is defining this revolution of generative AI. And I can certainly say as a technology, it's amazingly exciting. Very rarely do you see techniques that carry over so amazingly across so many domains that you start to feel that, okay, something fundamentally new has changed. I wouldn't say all problems are solved. We still have to make AI way more efficient, but I feel very confident. So here is a takeaway that I want to leave with you. And then I'll go to the business side. As a technologist, I am convinced that the cost of AI is going to come down by 3 orders of magnitude in a decade. So the reason I say that is, for the longest time, when AI was a collection of techniques, all the human expertise talent in the world, which was relevant to computer science, mathematics, building systems, was distributed. Today in AI now, there is a particular way of doing AI that clearly is starting to work. So now every type of expertise, and because there is now money behind it, the amount of human horsepower being applied to make AI more efficient and useful is unprecedented. And I expect 3 orders of magnitude improvement. The reason I say that is, if today you are somehow shocked by the cost, this isn't going to work for me, it's too expensive, that would be a mistake. You should assume that anything you want to do today is going to become cheaper every 6 months for the next 5+ years. And that's because it's going to improve in the way you build the models, it's going to improve in the software layer, it's going to improve in the way the chips and the hardware. Every amount of horsepower being applied is unprecedented. So on the one hand, you do hear huge energy, massive data center, billions of dollars of capex. The reason is everybody expects a lot of AI to get done. But any given task you want to do is constantly getting cheaper. So if you've been following the narrative, here is a data point. A task that even a year back we thought required $500 million of investment to build that, to build a 500 billion parameter model that Google released. Today, and I'm talking 6 months, 9 months, that same level of performance is available in models that are built with tens of millions of dollars in open by 10% teams. So the amount of progress in making AI cheaper is enormous. At the same time, we expect a lot of AI to get done. So that's why you see so much investment in every country, every nation, because we expect a lot of AI to get. So my only takeaway as a technologist is there is a real inflection. This is all not hype, because it's easy to dismiss this as hype. There is a real technology inflection. AI is going to get cheaper, and AI is very, very broadly applicable. So there is almost no domain in which you should assume AI is not going to eventually make an impact. Of course, the rate and pace will vary by sector. That's, if you will, from a technologist perspective. From a business perspective, here has been my observation. As with any hype cycle, everybody, AI went from, I don't even know what it is, to a conversation at the board level very, very quickly. Right? And you can think of ChatGPT's release as an inflection point. When something releases, which gets to 200 million monthly active users in 6 months, the world takes attention. And the only last parallel I can think of is the release of the Netscape browser 2 decades back. That's when something came out that everybody looked at it and felt like it meant something to me. So in 1994, if you were in technology, you would look at it and say, this is something fundamental, because there wasn't a new invention. It took all the invention and put it in front of human beings and say, hey, here is a new way to access information. The web was born. I think of AI from that perspective. And so when that happened, it became a board conversation. And so everybody needed an AI strategy. What I observed, which didn't work, is when that turned into a plethora of pilots and POCs in every use case on the planet. You can take banks, you can take insurance companies, you can take industries, manufacturing. There was this AI POC pilot wave. And a lot of people didn't see value. So when you ask whether there was, where is this going to be real? The success, I think, I saw 3 characteristics of companies that successfully have started to harvest AI. The one is not to spread yourself thin by trying an AI pilot in this business process, in supply chain, procurement, financial, accounting. Don't do that. Pick an area, because, as I said, the value of this AI is being able to build something that I can quickly use for many, many use cases. Pick a domain in which you have a huge multiplicative factor. So as an example, I'll talk from an IBM experience. The first domain we decided to use AI substantively internally was in human resources. Why? Because we are a global company. We are 250,000 people. So any iota of efficiency I eke out, I can immediately multiply it by 250,000 if I can scale it out. And for every company, that there may be something else which is the right multiplicative factor. So picking one domain and going deep versus spreading yourself thin was one key distinguishing factor between companies that have started to make use of AI versus ones that have just had hundreds of pilots and nowhere. The second is to recognize that you have to approach this as a transformation. You can't think of an AI project the way you might think of, ERP rollout, or, I'm going to upgrade one version of a software to the other. It is not a 6-month exercise with a clear. You have to approach this from the lens of a transformation, and in particular, a business transformation. So companies which approached it as, let me do exactly what I was doing, let me put a little dose of AI. No. If you truly want to, you have to be willing to reimagine how you do work, fight internal organizational battles and resistance to ways of working. You have to do that. And the third recipe for success was top-down. I have so far not yet encountered any sufficiently big company in which success didn't come from real top-down management commitment to change, to real adoption, holding people accountable. So I think those were the 3 characteristics. Pick your domain, have top-down commitment, be recognized that this is not just technology, this is business and process redesign. Those 3 were essential, I think, for enterprise transformation. The other observation I would make on AI is, I think it is important for enterprises for businesses to play a, how do I say this? A two-paced race. What I mean by that is, know that AI is a long game. You're going to be dealing with AI for the next decade in your company, whatever company it is. But at the same time, you do not have the luxury, if you want to be a leader, to sit back and wait. So you have to jump in while taking a long-term view. So this sort of almost a schizophrenic approach you have to internalize, because if you rapidly want every AI project to have immediate ROI at that level, then you will be doing little things. Because redesign requires work. So you have to be willing to say, I am playing a long game, have investment strategy that is long term, but continue to not wait, but start. And I think that is, some companies struggle to do that, but the ones who manage to do that, you can see that when you talk to them. That's the second piece of observation and maybe advice, if I can be so bold to offer to enterprises. The third comment I wanted to make from an enterprise perspective is, today there may be this mental model that AI is something that technology companies build and I use, which is okay as a consumer. It's perfectly fine. This is like, buy Android phone, buy Apple phone, you use your favorite app. As a consumer, that's perfectly reasonable. But as a company, you have to recognize that eventually your competitive advantage is going to be the data that you own. So since I have a technologist, I must offer up an equation. So one equation I must offer up is, AI is a very simple equation. AI is compute plus data plus math. Those are the three things. So you compute, you don't get, every company is not going, you're going to buy compute from somebody. Math, somebody is going to invent for you. Your differentiated advantage is your enterprise data. And we'll come back to this compute plus data plus math, because I think this is true for governments too. This is all. There are only three ingredients to AI. Lots of compute, lots of data, and math. Math is going to be the same. We will keep inventing new techniques to make AI efficient. As an enterprise, your only really differentiated advantage is your data. So as companies, as you chart your AI strategy, it's okay to start being a pure consumer and ask, what can I do with a model from a technology company? How do I make my supply chain more efficient, my procurement more efficient? But you have to recognize that for you to truly harness it, you must teach that AI your company's data, your enterprise data. That's scary, because most enterprises are not ready and set up to really harness. But that is why I believe that is the long-term vision that every enterprise must have. So that data in the middle is eventually going to be your competitive advantage, because all of your competitors are going to have access to the same compute and the same math. So the only thing that's going to change you from anybody else is your data. So be prepared to go on a journey in which you're not just a consumer of somebody else's AI, you're ready to train an AI on your own data. And that, I think, is going to be, and we can certainly have a discussion on what that would take. So that's, if you will, my few takeaways from having talked about AI in the context of enterprises. And I can certainly share examples. I would say, broadly speaking, as with every major technology, AI is about productivity. That is the single biggest, most important thing we see enterprises do. Examples, maybe a personal example from the company that I work for. We have openly, this is publicly stated, we have experienced or benefited from about $3.5 billion of savings in applying AI over the last 3 to 4 years. Yeah, so the four major buckets is human resources, supply chain and procurement, financial, and our own IT management. These are four big buckets in which we have line of sight. And so this is explicit accounting that we can say $3.5 billion of savings. So you can see this is real. And we certainly talk about these case studies openly. Every one of those case studies, you will see this play out. It required process redesign. It required top-down ownership. And then it required technology. We didn't have a technology problem because we are a technology company. So I certainly agree. But we wouldn't have succeeded just by having the technology without a purpose built. In fact, I say that our biggest AI champion was our chief human resource officer. Without her, I do not think we would have really embarked. It required her. It required her to behave like no human resource person 4 years back would have been behaving. Be willing to say, I'm going to change the way how I do work. And that requires, leadership. And so that was essential for success, going beyond the technology itself. So a couple of other areas I wanted to touch on, and I made some notes, so I'm going to go look at this. As a there is a lot of debate around when AI will make a difference, whether it will, and the gamut runs from its hype to it's going to take over the world and destroy humanity, right? You see this entire narrative, this entire spectrum. We can come back to the it's going to destroy humanity narrative, certainly in the Q&A. But in terms of the rate and pace, I always go back to this analogy, and which is broadly true of all technology, including AI. There are usually 3 steps that it takes for technology to actually make impact. The first step is invention. The second step is you take that invention and turn it into a product or a use. You can think of it as innovation. The last step is diffusion, where you actually have to turn that into meaningful. And today, we confuse rate and pace of invention with rate and pace of diffusion. So while I will be the first to tell you you should not wait, you should adopt, I will also tell you play the long game, because all of this notion that somehow tomorrow everything is going to change, it does not happen. So here is a data point. Electrification. It took 40 years between the invention of the electric dynamo to meaningfully, you could say, electrification fundamentally change how we do manufacturing. Why? Because you had to change how you did manufacturing, turn into production lines to derive the benefit. So the reason I say that is, if when you hear everybody come back and say AI is like electricity is going to change the world, that's why I give the electricity example. Well, it took 40 years for the electric dynamo to actually meaningful impact. So the reason I say that is, I think this innovation diffusion flow has to be well understood. And when you think about things like policy, things like what companies and countries can do, I think you have to certainly encourage invention, but actually the biggest role is how do you not stifle innovation and diffusion. So, and as a concrete example, again, I go back to ChatGPT because I assume everybody has experienced it. That's the only reason I'm going back to that example. The invention was the invention of the how to build these large language models. The innovation was saying that I'm going to wrap this model into a conversational interface and put it in front of every human being that can talk with it. That was the innovation. Diffusion is, okay, now what do I do with it? How do I actually transform? How do I save money? Do a use case, right? So these are the 3 steps. And diffusion is what is actually going to give impact. And diffusion is going to be a long game. My personal view is that domains in which there is maturity of data, where companies have invested to get their data in order to be able to apply, will move much, much faster. Also, safety critical areas will move much, much slower, way slower than we think it is going to be. Think of automated cars. The technology to do automated self-driving cars has been around for 2 decades. It's only now that you have something like Waymo starting to really apply. Why? Because it's a safety critical area. So as you think about enterprises and use cases, I would say these are the 2 lenses. Some domains with data maturity will move faster, others will take slower, and safety critical areas will take slower. So as you place bets within your enterprise, I think these are the things to think about. Then on a more note that goes beyond business and enterprises, I am personally very bullish and optimistic on what AI will do for fundamental science. I think, and this has always been historically, fundamental science approach, affects all of us. Compute and science have always been inextricably linked. We build computing systems to advance science. Right? The biggest supercomputers were first built to analyze, fundamental science happening in national labs. And I think after a very, very long time, we have a new technology like AI that is going to fundamentally change how science gets done. I'm very bullish about that, but I recognize that, again, like diffusion, it will take time to pay off. But I see the potential. The fact is that in science, we now have access to enormous amounts of data, but we are limited by the capacity of the human being to process, make sense of that, and come up with new invention discoveries, whether that is material science, whether that is molecules and biochemistry. So the opportunity for AI to fundamentally change how we do science, I think, goes beyond business, is something I'm also bullish about. And again, if there is interest in this audience, I'm happy to share examples of what I see happening in that domain. And then I think I should certainly, and I'll watch for time, talk a little bit about risks. Because I think the risks narrative and the regulation narrative also spans the spectrum from the spectrums that I laid out before. So my view is one, this narrative around AI super intelligence, AI taking over, is devoid of rationality, devoid of any sense. It does not take into account the reality of what the state of the technologies. It makes two mistakes. It makes the mistake that you can extrapolate the rate and pace of invention and somehow say that that is how technology will apply. Second, it makes the assumption that every sufficiently powerful thing wants to take control over. No. So I want to establish that when you hear people talk about super intelligence taking over the world and that we are going to be beholden to AI, I am completely dismissive of that. I'm certainly happy to have the discussion of why I'm dismissive of that. On the other hand, I do believe there needs to be a real rational conversation on practical and immediate risks. So the risks as we see daily in our lives: misinformation, deep fakes, cybersecurity threats, the fact that now AI is going to be in the hands of the bad players, and if you don't give AI in the hands of the good players, you're not going to be able to protect them. I think these are real risks. I worry, though, that sometimes this narrative around the extreme species destroying apocalyptic scenarios takes away from the actual more important conversation, which is to make sure we are addressing the real risks that happen today. So I hope that as we think about regulation and policy making, we don't stifle innovation because we get scared by this apocalyptic scenario, but at the same time, do not miss out on actually enforcing what we need to enforce, because some of the risks are real, they are happening, and they need to be addressed. So that's my commentary on risk. I'm sure we will get into regulations and things like that, and we can have that conversation. Maybe just as a closing comment before we open up to questions, Anand. Uh, my takeaway, I know it's probably a diverse audience, but I do want to maybe end with a note of positivity. So I have been in technology all my life, and you go through this journey of solving small little problems, and you certainly make, you write your paper, you get your scientific accomplishment, you go into a product, you might make a difference for a few clients. But it's very rare, and sometimes you spend entire careers in which you're not in the cusp of a really fundamental technology transformation. So certainly, I find myself very, I have great gratitude that I'm able to be in the middle of what I truly believe is a fundamental transformation. I don't think the last word has been said on the actual technique. There's a lot of innovation. When I tell you AI is going to become 3 orders of magnitude cheaper, I think there's enormous innovation, several Nobel Prizes, and possibly Turing and Fields medals waiting to be won. But I certainly see the moment very much like the moment when the web happened. And to me, the real sign of AI successful will be when we stop talking about AI. Because today, we don't talk about the web. 20 years back, we asked, what is your web strategy? Are you online? Do you have a website, right? You don't talk about it anymore. You take it for granted. I think that will be the true sign for when, and I certainly believe it will happen. Whether it will happen in 5, 10 years, etc., we will know. But I truly believe this is a transformative technology with broad ramifications. With that, I will close my opening comments.
So first of all, thank you, Sriram. That was a fantastic, comprehensive overview of the subject, and now I am really convinced of your decision to change the topic. This is really the topic that you had in mind, and you have executed it to a T, demystifying the entire revolution of the subject. I have a few questions. One or two have already been covered, so I will not labor you with that. But I'm typical of a finance manager wearing a finance manager's hat. I saw some data which was mind boggling, and I'll read it out just for 1 minute for the benefit of the audience. You know the numbers, but just for the benefit of others. In 2024, the total AI global market was 379 billion US dollars, and is set to grow by 35% annually. That's one data point. Entire AI global market. I came to another set of data which was again more mind boggling. The top 10 countries which have invested in the private sector AI domain is as follows: US has invested $470 billion, China $119 billion, UK $24 billion, Canada $15 billion, Israel $15 billion, Germany $11 billion, India 11. India is only seventh in terms of investment in AI, though we are the fifth largest economy, wanting to become third largest in 2 years' time. France is 9 billion, South Korea is 7, and Singapore 7. These are the 10. Now, my question to you around these numbers is, this is investment time. When is the payback going to happen? How is it going to happen? And I'll tell you a typical Aam Aadmi question is, for me, the payback means 5 years down the line, I should be paying 30% lesser for a Maruti or a Hyundai car today. Because the suppliers to them would have used AI to become more efficient in their production. That's number one. Number two, there are a lot of professionals sitting here 5 years down the line. Lawyers and chartered accountants should be billing lesser as a charge out rate 5 years down the line because they're using AI better.
You're going to put me in a tough spot. Yes, you're going to put me in a tough spot, but I will be as. So first on investment. So I think it's important. I think the US is a great example because of how the shape of investment has shifted. And I'm going to start with. So I think these numbers are right to a rough approximation. So 1950s and 60s, when the US was establishing national labs, Department of Defense, all of them, public sector investment in science and technology was 70%. 70% overall almost was public sector. Today, the private sector investment in technology is 73%. So what has happened is that it has been a complete reversal, that it was public sector investment that birthed the revolution that you see, the innovation, invention, and fundamental science technology that happened. But today, they are actually way behind. I think another number I saw somewhere was, especially if you look at both AI and quantum, private sector investment in the top 11 or 14 technology categories, the DoD calls out, private sector is 450% of public sector investment. Now, the reason I call that out is, I think countries like India, we must go back to think like the 1950s and 60s US, not think like the private sector today. Because I go back to the only equation I will use this entire talk, right? I said compute, data, and math. We have a lot of smart people. We can certainly invent the math. And the math is actually in the public domain. By the way, in these three things, even in the private sector, there is no mystery in the math. Okay, everybody knows the same techniques. It takes a month for a smart kid to publish an algorithm in China. It gets replicated. There is no mystery there. The differentiation is all in compute. And so today, compute is now a private sector investment, right? You're all seeing the numbers every day of, the Middle East investment, the investment in public sector, Project Stargate. I think in a country like India, to your number, must recognize that in that equation, our number, yes, I agree, our number, no, the number you mentioned, that compute number has to be growing and it has to come from the public sector. So that, I think, is my first commentary on one. Second is, you asked a payoff question. I'll go back to what I said. This is a transformative technology. So you have to be willing to play a little bit of a long game. So I agree that enterprises, companies will need, every company is not going to say, I'm going to invest now and wait for 6 years. So I agree. Enterprises have to pick and choose their use cases for payoff. And if you are smart, I think the payoff can be right away. That's why I gave you. Our payoff for $3.5 billion was 3 years. So it's certainly the productivity benefits are here and now. But the public sector investment must pay a long game. Because I go back to that number of 70% investment. That was the time the US created the national labs, the investment, the attraction of talent didn't happen just because there were cool universities. The attraction of talent happened because there were cool universities and amazing faculty. Why were amazing faculty there? Because they had the infrastructure to do their experiments, to do their compute, do their work. So I think that is going to be really, really important for a country like India to do. A second commentary on payoff is that I think maybe there are three temporal dimensions on which we should think about it. Companies need to look at 2 dimensions. The government has to look long term. I think the public sector has to take a decade-long view. I do not think that it makes sense for them to do anything longer. It has a decade-long view to fundamentally make sure compute to do AI is a national priority and made available for innovation to happen. Companies can take a two-part view, a strategic view, where you set yourself a vision to transform an area or something fundamentally important over a 5-year horizon, but then have pieces where you can start to take every project have an ROI. So I'll give a very concrete example of a client that I won't name. This is a manufacturing client. They have embarked on a 5-year transformation journey where they are intending to completely retool how they do their supply chain, how they do procurement, and how they actually do instrumentation on the shop floor with a huge infusion of AI. That's a 5-year program, a few $billion of investment, and their vision is to now for it to pay off over a 5-year horizon. But within that, they have broken down projects with very concrete AROI measured in 6-month time frames. That is a very, very, very reasonable strategy for companies to work on. So back to your Maruti question. I can't answer the Maruti question because it has more than productivity. There is a business model at play here. But if you ask me whether there is AI available today that can materially move the needle on how an automobile company can do procurement and supply chain, at least the paperwork associated with it, let alone manufacturing, yes, the technology is here and now. It's a matter of adoption.
What about the lawyers charged out rate?
Yeah, the other part of the question. So this, so maybe I'm going to use this question maybe to make a meta point, because I'm not sure I'm well qualified to comment on charge out rates. But I will make the following meta point, which we didn't get to, but I'm sure the audience is interested. Impact of AI on jobs and skills and labor, right? It's a big narrative right now. My point of view is, yes, it is going to have, anybody who tells you it's not going to have an impact on jobs is kidding. It is going to have an impact on jobs. But that is not new. We have always had technology have an impact on jobs. The reason it feels different this time is most of the technology in the past automated the physical aspects of human being. For the first time, this feels like this thing is trying to substitute our cognitive faculties, which looks a little bit scary, right? When the job of paralegal seems more risky than the job of a plumber, because the AI is not anywhere close to automating the plumber's job. The AI has every chance of automation. It looks very different because in the past, most of our technology transformations automated physical labor, right? If you think about the industrial revolution, it was fine. So it looks different, but conceptually it's the same. That's one difference. The second difference is, because this is digital technology, its pace is going to be much faster. It is going to be faster. So the opportunity for human beings to retool and reskill themselves is going to be a bigger challenge. Industrial revolution, I think you had about 2 generations to retool yourself and reskill yourself. I do not think you have 2 generations to retool yourself. You're going to, which is again the role that the public sector has to play to provide the training and skills required. Having said that, I think the other characteristics I see happening is, I think you're going to see a shift from capable generalists are going to become more valuable than extremely narrow deep specialists. The reason I say that is, extreme deep specialists, I'm not saying in every domain, but in a lot of domains, the AI is probably going to be able to be taught to do that. But broad generalists who know how to put the pieces together are going to be much, much harder. So we might see a shift in a generation. Because we went through a generation, multiple generations, which we prided ourselves on very, 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 very deep specialists who know one subject matter really, really, really well, know all the facts in their head. That kind of expertise, you may be better outsourced to an AI because you can train it. You are going to need humans to graduate to play 2 roles: specification and control. Take the analogy of what happened in factories. Before the Industrial Revolution, you were doing work. You physically did it. The Industrial Revolution allowed you now to monitor, check, quality control, periodically inspect something, you manage, push a button. Human being didn't get taken out of the equation. They went from banging against the metal to now inspecting and setting temperature. So the same thing is going to happen with cognitive labor as well. So my long-winded answer to your question is, be prepared for certain professions which are primarily addressing knowledge processing to dramatically change. But you are going to have the need for human beings to get better at specifying things and being able to check things. And the place where this transformation is happening in the industry that I come from is software development. Software development is completely changing. It's probably the one profession where the impact on AI is going to be the fastest. And it's happening because obviously we are the ones inventing the technology, we apply it to ourselves, we are less scared of trying it, we apply it. It is going to change. And it's going to change not because I do software development the way I do and put a little bit of AI. I will reimagine software development. So the startups that you see that are going for $3-4 billion are all startups who are reimagining software development. I think that will going to happen in every profession.
Very interesting. I'm now picking a very interesting comment of Sundar Pichai. He made a very recent comment in one of the speeches, and I'm just giving you the 3 points. I want you to elaborate the points to the audience. Sure. His first point was his perspective on AI. Increased engineering velocity, at least 10% increase in capacity. Requires a bit of elaboration. Second point he made was AI is not a replacement but an enhancement tool. And third is AI is a powerful partner for human ingenuity. You made some reference in your opening remarks.
Correct.
But if you could amplify that.
Sure. So his first comment, that 10% comment, is actually talking about software engineering. So it goes with what I just now said. I actually think the number is going to be way, way higher. And the reason it is way, way higher is what you see AI for software development goes back to what I said. Today, in software development, you have a series of tasks that you have to do. You have to, Anand will come to me, you give me requirements. I have to understand the requirement, turn it into a specification that is actually, more concrete. And I have to give it to somebody who architects how the things have to be put together. Then tasks are divvied up so that every piece can be built by a team of software engineers. Then you go to do testing, validation, etc. That's a model of software development. Today, we're getting to the point where two things can happen. One, Anand, you give me a requirement at a high level. I am able to get a collection of AI thingies to do the rest of it. I am only sitting there orchestrating. I'm merely suggesting, do this, change this. AI is figuring it out. So I'm replacing a team of 20 engineers by one orchestrator and an architect. The rest is done by AI. Why? Because the field of software engineering is one in which I can verify correctness. And fields where you can verify correctness is actually easy for me to teach the AI. I can teach an AI by, when I'm training it, allowing it to make mistakes. If it generates a wrong piece of code, it's easy for me to test. It's very different in other domains. I can't train an AI that way for medical diagnosis. I can't say, come, try your medicine. If it works, it may occasionally kill a human being, but you will know what not to do. It's not possible. But I can do that in software. So we are able to train really powerful systems that way. So that's why software engineering is changing. So when Sundar says 10%, I think the number is going to be way, way higher. Way, way higher. And so I certainly agree with him. The second comment on augmenting, I think it's always been the case. So somehow we feel like we have to make this case for AI as a technology, and because it goes back to this narrative that it's some super intelligent thing that is going to replace us. AI is just like any other technology, which is augmenting humans, which is always what we have done. It's true for every technology in the past. Electricity came, didn't replace human beings. Industrial revolution came, didn't replace human beings. It provides us tools to do our job better. AI is going to be that way. Like I said, the only reason we somehow feel a little bit of a discomfort is, I think we had this hubris that somehow language is at the pinnacle of human achievement, and that we didn't expect that an AI system could come and converse with us and at least sound sensible. So it's shocking us a little bit. But if we go past that shock, we have to realize that finally it is on us to figure out how to deploy it. So how much it augments versus replace is totally us as human beings, society's choice. It's not some preordained decision that somehow it will become massive. So I think I view this human augmentation as almost blasé. That is the way it is going to be. So I agree with him, but I feel like it is almost, the way technology has always been. The last comment on human ingenuity, I agree with. And that is why I go back to science. I think the role of AI as a tool to dramatically change how we do science is going to be because it is going to be a tool that augments human ingenuity. So yeah, I'll give a concrete example. Today, inventions in coming up with a new material or a new molecule requires a human being, a chemist, to look at it and say, I understand. Let's take drug discovery. Finally, it's today you have a lot of automation in testing, etc. But the notion of what is the type of molecule I should come up with to address a thing today is limited by totally what one or a few human beings can do. Imagine a world in which AI can act as a companion, constantly give you suggestions. That is going to scale human ingenuity in a way that it has never happened before. So far in science, we have used AI to only analyze data. We as human beings say, here is the hypothesis, here is the experiment, collect the data, you use computation to do data analysis. For the first time, I think AI can help you earlier. It can come back and say, what about this hypothesis? So that is something we have never had technology to. I still expect the human to be in control. You're not going to, nilly-willy try everything. But I think the role that AI plays in the scientific method is going to be fundamentally different. So I do agree, as a companion to ingenuity, it has a role to play. I feel, though, that that is still a little further out than productivity. So I see for the next few years, the impact on AI and enterprise is going to be productivity, but I think the AI of impact on science is not far away.
My last question, and then we will throw it up to the audience Q&A, is something I'm really worried about. I'll tell you why. You mentioned about regulations. If you look at the historical evolution of regulations worldwide, take two areas. Take the tariff regimes. We had the GATT in place. Countries should have some uniformity of approach in tariffs. It all started off well. But finally, each country decided its own barriers and prescribed its own import duties and stuff like that. Take our BEPS initiative under the tax laws. The OECD model countries got together in a very, very serious way to prescribe a minimum global tax so that countries don't indulge in shifting profits to other countries where the tax rates are lower. That was an initiative. It took 2 decades. But somewhere it also got derailed. Why I'm telling you all this is when this evidence is before us, when we embark on this journey of having a global uniformity of AI regulations, should we not look at some of the mistakes made in the past, do the corrections now, and first time do it right? Is that a better approach, or test the waters in an iterative process?
So yeah, this is a tough question because I think there is the reality of what I might naively suggest as a technologies must happen, and there is the reality of what will actually play out because there is a lot of geopolitics at play. So maybe before I answer the question on global uniformity, just some suggestions at least on what I think are sensible ways to think about regulation policy. One is, I will go back to my equation. Do not regulate in that equation of compute, data, and math. Please do not regulate math because there was an attempt to somehow regulate the technique, regulate models over. That is a mistake. Perfectly reasonable to regulate compute because today that is your instrument for geopolitics. The reason why laws are being passed on what NVIDIA can send to China, what they can sell everywhere, is because of the three pieces, the only control point today is compute. So when the world is divided between the Western and the Eastern, that's the only place they have to do compute. So that is certainly going to be the place to regulate. As a country, I think when you think about establishing regulations, I would say one is focus on risk-based regulation. And focus on regulation in the context of the use case. Horizontal AI regulation, we have to tread very, very carefully. Because if you don't tread very carefully, horizontal AI regulation is going to stifle innovation. You will go back to regulating the math. You will say a model of this size you should not do. This technique, that's a mistake. You are better off regulating its use. So existing regulatory bodies in individual industries, whether they are in healthcare or in banking or in transportation, they should obviously look at regulation and say, how should I react to AI? But somehow making some broad-based regulation, to me, this feels like regulating a computer. It's the same computer you're going to use, Anand, to file your taxes that a bad person could use to launch a cyber attack. I should be regulating the use, not regulate the computer. So we have this tendency that somehow we think we need to regulate AI. I think we regulate the use of AI, when you can judge the risk and you can be precise about regulation. The only place where, in my mind, horizontal regulation makes sense is when AI broadly reaches consumers and there is opportunity for personal harm and risk, like deep fakes and misinformation and trust. There is room for broad-based horizontal regulation, especially when it is widely deployed, made available to everybody. I think hold the deployers responsible. But otherwise, there was a period in which there was an attempt. I remember being in conversation, regulators would say, tell me a number. 10 to the 25 units of AI model I should not regulate, 10 to the 26 and more I should regulate. And I used to tell them that is silly because what you think requires 10 to the 26 for me to do, 6 months later I will get done with 1000. So now I've gone outside your regulation. It makes no sense. So trying to regulate the math and the algorithms meaningless, regulate the use case, and I would hope as a utopian, I would say even compute should not be regulated. But I recognize that the reality is today AI is the technology of our times. And every technology of time becomes a national security imperative. So of course, people are going to think of AI as something where the country that I'm threatened with should not have the same level of technology. The only instrument they have is to regulate compute. So the reality is, I think you're going to see regulation of AI compute.
On the stroke of 7 p.m. now, I'm throwing it open for audience Q&A.
And the third one is DeepSeek. DeepSeek changed everything.
Yes.
And they did distillation. Why the hell did nobody think of that?
Okay, so this will be a technical question and technical answer to a technical question. So I'm going to please bear with me if this is so maybe answer the third one first. Okay, DeepSeek. First of all, hopefully you are not falling prey to the actual narrative, because the DeepSeek narrative was a wonderful marketing narrative that somehow said they trained the entire model at 1,000th the cost. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. They are ignoring the fact that it's like saying the following. It's like saying the money I spent in launching a space rocket is only the money I spent on the day of the launch. That's not true. You spent a ton of money investing building rockets. So DeepSeek invested a lot of money. They didn't take that into account. They just took that last training run and then said, I made it. And they ran with it. They ran with the wave. So first of all, let's not believe that. They had an amazing set of engineering innovations that are now well understood. Everybody knows it. But there was no unique secret sauce. That's number one. Number two, distillation was also well known. The challenge with distillation, and it may be opaque to many of you, but I'll quickly answer that question. Distillation has a challenge that it will make the model very good at what you target it for. It destroys its broad-based behavior. So there are enough evidence that the distillation will destroy safety alignment. You will end up creating models. So you can do distillation. It comes with its pitfalls. You should know what you're doing. To your question on Grok 4 and physics, we didn't touch on this, but there's one thing AI does not have. Anybody who tells you otherwise, this is just marketing. AI does not have a world model. So what I mean by that is a model of how the world works is not there. AI has only read or seen the data it has. Today, we somehow come with a world model. I think that is ingrained in us through evolution. And there is an amazing amount of learning happening in the first few years after a child is born that we have not managed to replicate in AI at all. And that is where we form. The level of understanding of basic physics that a 2-year-old has, today no AI model actually has. Having said that, in limited environments, in limited control environments, where you can allow the model to do self-play, where you can allow the model to simulate and gather data, it's possible for the model to develop amazing physical intuition. But I do not for a moment believe that the next fundamental breakthrough in science is simply going to come from a model hypothesizing something. It has no worldview. I can certainly believe that a fundamental advancement may come from the next Einstein or Niels Bohr or Schrodinger coming up with a hypothesis, but being able to use an AI tool to validate it way faster than they could have before. That I certainly buy, not on its own.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Yeah.
I'll come back to maybe.
Yeah. My name is Chinna, and I have a question. Anand, here. The US has said that they are not going to regulate AI for 10 years. And the same thing happened with the internet. They went for the opt-out model, and Europe went for opt-in. And the result was the US developed phenomenally. And now, if they are not going to regulate AI for 10 years, they're basically saying that's why the investments are coming in. The huge number when you're talking about. So, what is your thoughts on that?
Look, I think there is a. Okay, I will give you my opinion and then I will tell you what I think will actually happen. The reason you see this distinction is the narrative in the country there is very much that we should not do what Europe is doing. So there is a direct correlation being drawn with Europe's regulatory posture. And they are looking at it and saying, look at their GDP, look at my GDP, why the heck would I do what that mistake ever again? So that's very clear, and so that's how they're going to approach it. But I do think that there is something, at least for the rest of the countries, for all of us to take into account a little bit, which is, if you look at the key regulation that allowed social media companies to proliferate, that is, I believe that is Section 230. I think Section 230 that allowed them, that gave them free pass to say, if random incorrect content shows up, I'm not responsible. That is between the consumer and the producer. I think if we take that same posture with AI, I think we are going to be in deep trouble. Because there, the amount of misinformation and material was human scale. With AI, this is going to explode. So there is something to really think about, whether that level of laissez-faire regulation for public use of these powerful models opened up to everybody, is that the right thing to do? Is worth asking that question. I'm not saying it will happen, but I'm saying that is worth asking the question, at least for the rest of the countries. On the rest of the regulation, I would go back to what I said before, which is our posture, I think sensible posture, is to go back to use cases. There is no reason the transportation administration in a country is not the best place in which for them to enhance that regulation for what AI is going to do to them. So I think if we take that approach, it allows you to focus on use cases, make measured risk-based judgments. Problem, I think, that happens in the European system is I think in spirit have adopted risk-based regulation. They do talk about, I think they have things that are prevented, then they have high risk, and they have a categorization. The challenge they have is that I don't think they are prescriptive on how companies should go ahead and do this. And then what ends up happening is they stifle small innovations because regulatory overhead is easier for a big company to deal with. I have the balance sheet and the horsepower to go deal with it. You actually end up hurting the small enterprises who are not able to deal with. This is what happened with GDPR. So that is the one thing we have to be careful of. I don't think the answer is to completely take the US approach and say, I will regulate nothing, because I think we will have the AI amplified version of all the ills of social media. On the other hand, I don't think the answer is also to take the extreme approach of I'm going to be so prescriptive that now I'm going to stifle innovation, because that is exactly what happened with GDPR. If you look at what happened with GDPR, the people who actually were not affected were eventually all the big companies. All of us, including the company I work for, made a lot of money doing GDPR implementations. So we all made a lot of money. The people who were hurt were the small companies for whom the overhead was so much that it actually caused a problem. That is a lesson, I think, for countries like India to take.
You talked about Einstein and Schrödinger and Heisenberg. What would be the impact of AI on the students in my classroom at the school level too? My students who after post graduation have registered for basic research in physics or allied subjects, how is it going to impact their thinking, making them move from a basic fundamentalist and a structured thinking to a next plane higher level of thinking? Will it make them take the easy way out, or is it going to make them more creative and improve their intelligence?
So is a great question. I wish I have a magic bullet, but I'll offer my suggestion. I think we are going to have to rethink testing and curriculum. I think if we don't do that, what we are going to do is incentivize students to just take the easy way out. So it is, I think, we are better. It's like the following. Imagine that you have the calculator available to you, but you tell them you should not use the calculator, and you're going, or you must look up log tables. You don't get to go use log. That is silliness. AI has to be viewed that way. So you must permit them to use these tools. Your evaluation methodology, the skills that you want the human being to acquire have to change. I go back to what I said. Human beings are always going to have a role to play as the people who are going to specify and orchestrate. For that, a deep understanding of what it is you're orchestrating is always going to be important. In the fundamental science domain, I see AI assisting in coming up with hypotheses. The hypothesis and ingenuity is still going to be human driven. So the question, I think, I don't have an answer. The question for us to ask is, how should I evolve a curriculum? How should I evolve my testing methodologies so that I am not falling back and I'm not telling, I will not let you use ChatGPT, I'm going to give you a closed book exam. That is silliness, because that's not how the real world is going to be. Rather, what is it that you want them to demonstrate? So here is an example. Here is a data point. The International Mathematical Olympiad, right? Today, I think starting 3 years back, we have permitted AI to compete in it. Right? It's an Olympiad that usually only human beings do. And today, by the way, even now, it's only the human beings who win. But AI started competing in it. As of last year, AI was able to win the bronze medal. And there was huge celebration. I think Google's model won the bronze medal. This IMO is happening, I think, last couple of days. AI is barely even able to get up to I think it's 6 points below the lowest scorer. So the reason I'm saying that is, all this narrative that you hear that somehow says overnight AI knows reasoning, it can do, is a long way to go. So those 20 kids who are participating in IMO to this day have more math ingenuity than the best AI model trailed with $500 million or $500 billion worth of investment. And my point is, I think this is on us to encourage that kind of ingenuity. I think that is a huge challenge. I don't have an answer, but I certainly believe the answer is not to restrict the AI tools from the students. I know some institutions make that mistake. I think that's pointless.
Yes, sir. You had said about everything getting inexpensive, sir. You had said, like manufacturing. Even will it actually happen? Like, suppose if you use these AI mixed with, what do you say, the 3D printers to print cars, just the shell and all of it, and even the construction equipments and what you do, it just one block. That could it drastically change even the speed and reduce expenses and make things more livable?
So I think in an industry like that, I think we should maybe grade the rate at which I think AI will have an impact. The first impact of AI will be not necessarily on the manufacturing process itself. It's all on the surround paperwork and other digital processes or human processes that guide manufacturing. That is where the first impact is going to happen. So when I said IBM had benefits from applying AI to supply chain and procurement, that isn't necessarily, we also do it in the fact if not there. Our first benefit was simply contractual, paperwork, risk management, approvals, automating. That will be the first level. The second level of benefit will be in things like maintenance and repair, where today there's a lot of sensor data that goes waste. So here is another data point. We ship about 30,000 storage systems. We had a benefit where the storage systems will actually call home and send data back to our servers. We are a technology company, you could argue leading edge technology company. We were barely making use of that data to its full efficiency. We started doing it. We're able to cut down how much we have to fix by shipping parts to places where we ship our storage by 30-40%. So that's the next benefit. The third benefit is when you actually change the physical process of manufacturing. So I would say those will be the three grade. You first start with changing the digital step. Then you start with automating maintenance, repair, where you're already established sensors, you're just not using the data well enough. Third is fundamentally changing manufacturing process itself. That's why I gave the dynamo example. Took 40 years for the full benefits of electrification. So let's agree it's probably going to take 10 plus years for the full benefits of AI. But there are steps you can do along the way, and I think that's the journey that every enterprise should embark on.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Firstly, thanks a ton for a very informative talk. And like Mr. Anand said, I'm going to ask you a very fundamental question, basic question. We are talking mainly about business enterprises and this, and mostly on the corporate world and things like that. I'll take you to a different world altogether. That is, let's say the government, judiciary, defense, whatever. The basic problem that exists is we have tons of records going back to probably hundreds of years. And now, like you said, you need to mine the data, then you have to make the machine learn, and then you go on to deep learning and then AI. But here the basic problem is digitizing the records and in a form giving attributes and taking it out. It's becoming a very, very labor intensive and laborious process, time consuming process. Any ideas on how to accelerate this process? Because rest everything what you said will come after this. Most of the people are stuck at this level. And it's a huge problem, I can tell you that.
No, I agree with you. I think I will tell you the following. The digitization technology has also received an impetus from this most recent generation of AI that is often missed out in the narrative. So, for example, OCR technology, which is a long-running established discipline, has had a huge fillip with this most recent generation of AI. The challenge, though, is, and this is where geography makes a difference, nations make a difference. All of the investment, the benchmarks, the improvements in techniques are all measured in English and the top 5 European languages. So this is where you need investment in a country like ours to focus on our languages, assuming some of that is data in multiple languages. That you can't just reuse the OCR tech. You're going to have to adopt the advances in OCR that are happening to the domain and languages of interest, and that is only going to be done by where that kind of human knowledge of that language exists. So my point to you is, yes, there has actually been a huge advancement in the quality, the ability of models to sense text, including text which has things like rubber stamp, has folded edges, it is crumpled. All of them have dramatically. These are all things that used to defeat classical OCR tech. These models have gotten much, much better at dealing with it. But all the advances remain basically in English and the top 10 European languages, because that's where the money is. And I'm sure China is doing what they're doing as well. We need a way to adapt that to the languages. Then I think you can embark on a process. So my short answer is, it's not that we don't know how to do it. You need an investment to do it. It does require custom training the models for human language data and for it to understand. There is no magic bullet. A thing that was trained there isn't going to automatically do a good job here. It gives you a base to start with, and you have to be able to adapt it.
I just want to have your view. There is a research paper published by Apple which says that
Yes.
AI is good in pattern recognition and mimicry. Other than that, there is not
Yes.
much impact.
Yes.
That's my first question. Second question is, you said about the top-down approach from IBM angle. The average lifetime of a company is about 7.5 years, and the CEO changes every 2 to 3 years. How do you think they will play the long-term game? My third question is, from the regulatory angle, do you see consolidation happening between large players acquiring small players who do not have the burden of profitability quarter se quarter tak?
Great questions, all great questions. So in the first one, the Apple paper, I will paraphrase the paper. The paper basically wants to say AI is just a pattern recognition, and all these claims about advanced reasoning and all that it's not true. And I will tell you, I partially agree with the paper, but I also think they are dismissive of the fact that you can make it do useful things. What I mean by that is, words like intelligence and reasoning are very, very, very ill-defined. So any paper that claims to say, I want to make a binary statement that AI can and cannot do reasoning is silly. Because even amongst the two of us human beings on stage, there is a set of discipline which he can do reasoning I cannot do, and there is a set of disciplines I can do reasoning that he cannot do, right? So I think reasoning at some meta level is ability to take facts and figure out that if A is true and B is true, then C is true. We think of that as reasoning. And my point is, practical uses of reasoning are always going to be highly domain specific. So my disagreement with that paper is that you're taking a word that is very nuanced, adapting a binary definition and simply want to prove that AI models don't reason. I agree with you. I can totally find many, many domains which today's AI models won't reason. It doesn't take away from the fact that when I put my mind to it, I'm able to teach them how to do limited useful reasoning in targeted domains. Today, they are reasoning over entire code bases and allowing me to fix bugs and make changes. Isn't that reasoning? So that's my response to the first question. Your second question on companies, it is a very, very fair point. Companies with a short lifetime, I would say, are going to be consumers of AI. So you do not get to play the long game where you take your AI, customize it with your data, deploy it. You're going to have to be, how do I say, you have to be watching out for continued advancement in out-of-the-box shrink-wrapped AI capabilities from technology providers and be rapidly able to adopt it as quickly as possible. That is the model, and that's perfectly okay. I mean, I think that doesn't mean that that is not a way to use AI. It is just that you're not going to be able to turn AI into a long-term asset, which a company with a long longevity can do. But you can certainly use shrink-wrapped out-of-the-box capabilities, and that's happening. And today, with software available as a service, if the ROI makes sense, you can continue to tap into advances. And AI out of the box is going to continue to get better. There is so much capital getting investment. The out of the box models are going to get better and better. You tap into them, and you tap into them faster and better than your competitor, you're going to grab market shares. That's my response to number two. But I agree with you. I was maybe this was my built-in bias because IBM tends to work with large companies, Fortune 500. So I tend to take that view of long-term bets. Your third question, remind me again, was on? Yes. So one blanket rule I would say is small companies that aim to differentiate purely on models will not survive. Will not survive. The only way, because they're going to get eaten up by the capability just going back to the base model. For smaller companies to differentiate themselves, there are only three possible opportunities. You differentiate on the experience you provide. Why are all these new software engineering companies? Because they reimagine software. It was not the model. They actually used models from the big companies, but they provided a reimagined user experience. That's one way to differentiate. Second way to differentiate, be a deep expert in your domain. A base model is never going to be an expert in all the domains. So if you are a deep expert in your domain, you can build on top of the base AI capabilities of a pre-trained model from any of the technology providers, differentiate with domain-specific knowledge. That's the second way. The third way is go after specific business processes and industries and use the cheapest possible model out there and make it fit for purpose to do that. You can differentiate on usability and cost. And that is going to happen. Today, I know the narrative in the consumer world tends to be about the biggest models that have been trained with the maximum amount of compute. But if you've been following what's happening, there is a plethora of open source models, and that is continuing to become cheaper and cheaper. So if you have the wherewithal to take open source small models that are cheap and adapt it to specific use cases, you will have a competitive advantage because it will be impossible for the big model to reduce their cost beyond a point. And that is where you will enter the market. So those are the three things. Any company that tries to not add any one of these values will eventually get eaten away because the bigger model are just going to embrace them and then swallow them whole.
Hi. So I'm going to ask. I'm here.
There.
Yeah. Hi. So I'm going to ask a question from a student point of view who's going to enter into the job market. So a few years ago, it was told that irrespective of the sector you're going to go in, just know at least one coding language like Python. But I'm pretty sure it is not applicable anymore in the era of AI. So my question is that, irrespective of the sector, what is one thing in AI that I must know? Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I would go the other way around. Don't ask the question, what one thing in AI I must know. Ask yourself, I'll go back to what I think human beings are always going to be needed for. You're going to be needed for specification and control. So the thing that you need to continue, what's always going to be important is structured thinking, way to think, way to learn. Those two are never going to go away. So rather than saying I should be learning a programming language, the programming language may not have a very long half-life. It may go out of fashion in 6 months and AI might get at it. But if in the process of learning that programming language, you learn how to think analytically, you learn how to break down problems, you learn how to take a ill-specified problem, turn it into a concrete problem. Those are skills that are going to be timeless. Those are the skills that human beings are always going to do, that an AI is never going to do. So think, therefore, continue to do a coding course, but don't expect your value to be in the language that you learn. The value extract out of it is just a vehicle for you to learn structured thinking and problem solving. That, I think, is going to be a constant. I don't think that's going to change at all.
Yeah, so question here. So far, all innovations have helped to uplift the overall standard of living of human beings, but they have also deepened the disparity in income and wealth between a small group and a very large group.
Correct.
How do you see the evolution of AI? Is it going to make this disparity much worse, or will it even it out to some extent?
Unfortunately, the signs are it is going to make it worse unless we consciously institute regulation that favors dissemination and back it up with public sector investment. Because right now, I go back to my equation. The defining factor is compute today. Every AI scaling law is scaling based on data and compute. So, and today, the data nations can collect, data enterprises can have. Compute today becomes the most important criteria. And today, compute is not normalized at all. So unfortunately, the biggest countries and the biggest companies that have access to the biggest compute are continuing to have a huge and enormous advantage that will continue to drive disparity unless public sector comes in explicitly to normalize. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for you, but that's the reality.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Okay, I'm Lata. I'm in the film industry, and though there has been a vocal pushback in the use of AI in the film industry,
Yes.
it is becoming a pretty mainstream tool now for all of us. Like even a person like me.
Yes.
Earlier we used to storyboard, where we literally used to draw out the images, but now AI gives you multiple versions, and it is how you kind of instruct it, where you get a generative answer to the same. There are going to be, I think everyone in the room can become a filmmaker now. Everyone can become a storyteller. It's becoming that simple. What do you see as a forecast, like ethically and creatively?
So, and maybe I'll use your example. First of all, it's a great example. I'll use your example to maybe point to one other trend I think AI will drive. I think AI will become one of those things that is going to democratize a lot of things. You gave an example of its potential ability to democratize filmmaking, because now your creativity is there and I have access to a tool that can do that. I would say the same thing is happening in programming too. We expect 1 billion applications to be written, not because we're going to have 1 billion software engineers, because now, and I'm going to put you on the spot, we're hoping to give AI where tomorrow Anand doesn't have to go to an IT team to get something done. AI, he just has to describe it and an application will be coded up by the AI. So I think this is a general pattern that many things are going to get democratized. That it is now going to go back to now, what is going to distinguish you is actually going to be your human ingenuity. It goes back to the discussion. It is an accelerant to human ingenuity, but because now everybody has access to that accelerant, the bar on you to distinguish yourself is just going to become higher and higher. So that is the way I see that happening. And that's what is going to be true. It's going to be true in software engineering. It's already happening in software engineering. And by the way, it scares the heck out of people, because the people who get scared the most are the CIOs and CTOs. They are saying, Anand, sorry to put you on the spot, Anand has no training. He does not know how to write secure software. And now I'll expect Anand to go prompt a model and deploy an application. So what energy is being spent in, how do I give Anand that kind of power? Because I don't want Anand, the business person, to be curtailed by the rate and pace of the IT team. But I still have to think about security, governance, etc. That is probably what is going to slow it down. Honestly, today, I can put AI in the hands of everybody and make all of you programmers. The only reason we don't do that is we don't yet know how to secure it. So that is what is going to, and I think the same thing is going to be true there. The question is going to be now, who gets to decide what is good content, what is bad content, what is content that gets the right ratings. All of these are going to become important questions to answer. I don't have good answers, but I can tell you that this is a pattern that I certainly see happening in many industries.
Thank you so much.
Maximum 1 or 2. Actually, we have another 5 minutes. You want to close it? Yeah. Okay. One last question.
One question here. I want to know the effect of AI in music, medical, and education industry.
Wow. That will take 4 hours to answer.
Look, I think all I can say at this point is I will say two patterns. Okay, the democratization example is a good one. So you should assume that you now have a tool that is going to amplify human ingenuity in all of these creative domains, right? So that I think is true in all of those domains. The second pattern I think will certainly be true, that is cross industry, like I said, is things, if in all of those industries, extreme specialists are actually going to be in danger. Extreme specialists purely on knowledge. I think we are still further away from automation of physical labor. Because, for example, the advancement we have seen in natural language processing, we are yet to see at that level in general purpose robotics, which is why I said a plumber's job is safer than a paralegal's job, right? But in all of those industries, extreme domain specialists driven purely by their knowledge are going to be in danger. But in all of those industries, there is going to be a huge democratization. So if you are in a profession where the reason you're doing what you're doing is you have access to something that others don't have, I think AI is going to democratize that. Then the bar is going to be on you to be creative and use the tool better than somebody else. Finally, I think the simple mental model is, I know we talk a lot about AI. Let's recognize that finally it is a tool. So eventually it is going to be the human that uses the tool better is going to do better than the human that does not use the tool. But it is just that this is a tool that is coming in to touch a lot of professions all at the same time. That is why it looks like a very horizontal transformation. But it is true. It is a tool that is touching a lot of professions because the technique is very general purpose. It is able to apply to language, it is able to apply to software, it is able to apply to videos, it is able to apply to images. So it's so broad-based that it feels scary because it looks like you turn around, every profession looks like it will get affected. And I don't have an answer to say it will not be. My only comment is that the rate and pace will change. And so it's on us to skill ourselves up to become good users of the tool.
Yeah. Last question. You
will repeat the question.
Thank you so much.
Can't hear.
I'll repeat the question.
I will repeat the question. Don't you?
Can I borrow this? Thank you so much, all of you. Now, with all the potential, the reality today, for example, in Gaza, as we are speaking, a genocide is happening and AI is involved. As the chemical technology companies were involved in Holocaust. So how do we deal with that? Secondly, when technology happens, there is a cultural lag. Now, today it is not just a cultural lag, it is a consciousness lag and a spiritual lag. So how do we grapple with the challenge?
These are very deep questions. I don't think technology is the answer to technology ethics. Human beings are the answer to technology ethics. So I don't think there is any other, I do not think that either a technology or an AI is going to answer that question. That's a question of ethics. The only thing that technologists can offer is governance tools. But which governance tools to employ when is always an ethical question. So I don't think that there is anything that AI has to offer. On the second question on consciousness, I think that goes back to the conversation we had. I do not believe either in superintelligence or consciousness. This is all, this is AI. When you deal with something you're not able to imagine to do something, you immediately attribute superpowers. None of these models have either consciousness, forget consciousness, they don't even have a world model. So let's recognize that they are a powerful tool trained on large amounts of data that can be effectively used. But let's not ascribe to them either motives of control, motives of taking over the world, or a presumption to understand consciousness. That is a useful thing.
Very good. I think Please give him a big round of applause. Such a fascinating presentation without any scrap of paper. He referred to it only just for formality, he referred. Otherwise, everything was stored well inside. No PowerPoint presentation. Just came from the heart. Shows how deeply he's involved in the subject. And what we will propose to this is only episode number 1. So we'll have a probably episode number 2 1 year down the line. And by that time, much water would have flown under the bridge, I'm sure. This is an evolving subject. Every day, something new is coming out. In fact, this year, every chairman speech which has come out, Wipro, if you take TCS, one other company, the chairman says there is a 1 paragraph reference only on AI, what they want to do. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to give you a very humorous incident which happened a week back. There was a board meeting which concluded, and the company secretary circulated the draft minutes, which they have to do within 15 days. It was circulated. One of the independent director wrote back, reply to all, standard reply, minutes incomplete, please refer. So the company secretary got agitated, worried what happened, and checked up. No, the minutes are very elaborate. You have covered everything. There is no mention of the word AI and data analytics in the minutes. So people are obsessed that these two terms should be there somewhere in the discussions.
They had used AI to generate the minutes, it would have taken.
I don't know about that. No, I'm only saying that this is going to be a subject for next, I don't know, 400 years, 500 years discussion, but something new will emerge out of it every time. So thank you, Sriram. He has come, he flew in from New York yesterday night. Coming tomorrow back, he's flying back again. So it's not an easy job to hand out to Chandramouli to please come.
Thank you very much. I think that was a fascinating discussion. And this was our third lecture in a series on AI. And we've been gaining more and more from each lecture. Thank you very much, Sriram, and thank you, Anand, for conducting it so brilliantly. So the takeaways are intelligence is finally human. Artificial intelligence is not going to replace the human. So go out there, ideate, invent, innovate, and diffuse. I think these are the takeaways that came out of this fascinating lecture. Some housekeeping announcements. We have on 26th of July, Money Doesn't Grow on Trees. This is a book discussion, Lavanya and Arti. On the 2nd of August, we have another fascinating event, Daughter of Two Rivers. It's latest book by Arun Krishna. I'm sure you'll all enjoy that. On the 9th of August, we have Major General Indra Balan. Last time he had promised to speak on the after effects of Operation Sindoor. We'll see what he has to offer to us now. On the 16th of August, we have Madras Art Deco Architecture. Sujata Shankar will be with us. And on the 27th of August, we have the former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. T.S. Krishnamurthy. He'll be talking about his book, Beyond the Ballot. So we have a series of events lined up for all of you, and we hope that the hall is as full as it is today. Thank you very much for being here in spite of the inclement weather. And thank you once again, Sriram, and thank you, Mr. Anand, for that wonderful discussion.